I'm covered in fuzzies and thread, which means I spent a lot of time in here this weekend. Hi, and welcome to Quilt Meets World, where we have adventures in piecing and joy. I'm Russ, coming into my sewing room. I'm not even going to talk about work this week. Even with the holiday on Wednesday, I think we all worked way too much. And the project that we're doing doesn't seem to be giving any of the users comfort and joy. It is almost mildly amusing that things that we have complained about for, weeks now are finally being identified by the users. And, we're doing that whole I told you so or we informed you thusly thing, but we were always ignored because we're not apparently stakeholders. We're just power users or something. I don't know. Riley and Percy, there's nothing really exciting that happened this week. Although Riley did get a new toy from the neighbors. And amazingly enough, she hasn't destroyed it yet. She hasn't really been playing with it, so that's why it hasn't been destroyed. Don't know why she hasn't been playing with it. It's got, from what I can tell, it's got a double squeak in it. So when you squeeze it, it comes like almost in stereo. It sounds a little weird. So maybe that's why she hasn't played with it as much. She has been playing with a big giant squeak, so maybe she's trying to get that destroyed before she goes on to the next. For me, Saturday was a busy day. On my live on Saturday, I did my Saturday sampler block, which is right here. It's a modified Ohio Star or Ohio Star variant or whatever we want to call it. It went together very easily. I did make a couple modifications to the printed pattern because of the way that I work with things in my brain, especially quarter square triangles. I did find a similar pattern. It's not quite exact, but that's the problem with trying to find exact patterns in some cases. If you are interested in sewing along with the Saturday sampler, I can't give you the exact pattern because of the copyrights in the actual instructions. But I can, like I said, I can show you mine. I can give you similar instructions and see what it does for you. After my live, our neighborhood did our annual neighborhood summer social. We have socials about once a quarter, and the summer one is always the hottest because it's warm out there right now. They usually do a water slide or something for the kids, and it's like bringing potluck stuff, and they had brought barbecue in from one of the local barbecue restaurants. I was able to stay for about an hour, which included the about 40 or so minutes for the quarterly meeting. And I'm going to say 40 is really overshot because it took them about 20 minutes to start everything, but I'm going to count that as the meeting side. Got to eat. At the end of it, I was a little sweaty because, like I said, it was warm outside. I ran home and I showered real quick because I spent the late afternoon on my friend Stephanie's channel, and the group of us did a jelly roll race. It was my first jelly roll race. It was a interesting experience. I knew I was going to have fuzzies all over the place, but I never realized exactly how many fuzzies. At one point, I joked I was wearing black shorts, and now they're not. Doing the jelly roll race, the first step that you do is sewing them end to end, and I think we all just sewed straight seams instead of a diagonal seam. I think that just was a little bit better. It would have been more work, more time to do the diagonal seams because then you have to cut the diagonals off afterwards. Whereas the straight seams, I just stacked up a whole bunch and whacked the ends off of them. So that was, that went by pretty quick. Then that first 800 plus inch seam was heck. It's like we're going and going and going, and I'm like, how far is 800 inches? Until I now realize that's the distance around my socialites quilt twice. So basically, the amount of time it would have taken me to do all the machine binding is about the same number of inches. But again, yeah, we were going and going and going. The second seam of 400 inches was a little bit less forgiving, but it still felt like forever. But as you know, the seams get half and half and half, so that final seam of 50 inches seemed like a breeze. We all had charities in mind for our quilts. Mine will be going to Franciscan Children's Hospital up in the Boston area. That hospital has a little bit of history with my family. 11 years ago, my niece spent about a month there when she was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome. My sister pointed out when I was talking to her about trying to figure out how to get a hold to their donations place that the Jelly Roll race date was 11 years and 1 day after my niece was released from the hospital. I'm still waiting on the details from the hospital, the group that manages the donations. So I'm going to be excited when I get all that information back and make sure that the quilt fits their rules. Hopefully it does. Sunday, I spent the day at a retreat hosted by my friends Stephanie of Stephanie Stitches and Shannon of Sleigh Arts. That was a whole lot of fun. Stephanie's pattern was a quilt where I only got one block done. And in my defense, I only did one block because I wanted to make sure that I can do the block and make sure, my seam allowances were good, everything else was good. And I needed to spend a little bit of time focusing on the blocks for Shannon's project because Shannon's project was a bag. So after I finished the traditional pieced block for Stephanie's, and I have the rest of the pieces here, the units sewn, I shifted gears, went into foundation paper piecing mindset. And apparently I wasn't awake enough because I had to pull out my seam ripper on more than 9 occasions. Thankfully, I don't do like a 1.1 stitch length like Shannon does, so nothing fell apart as I was doing my unstitching and restitching and then unstitching again. But it just taught me that, hey, one, I need to give myself just a little bit more of an allowance in some cases. I didn't pay attention to see how big the cuts were from the instructions versus what I'm accustomed to. So there was that. But also, I just wasn't awake, and my mindset had just been in traditional piecing mode, so it was harder to switch my brain over. But once I got there, everything came together swimmingly, and I got those 2 blocks done for her project. And I was like, okay, now let's work on the bag. And I'm reading the instructions, but because I've never done a bag before, I didn't quite know what to do. So I waited for Shannon to get to the thing, to get to the steps, and I'm following up there. And then all of a sudden, there was a little bit of an issue, and it's not a big one. I mean, things happen. I understand. I mean, we've all seen the corrections pages on some of these pattern websites. But there was just a minor issue in the amount of strapping that we needed, and I didn't have enough. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to focus on everything that Shannon shows in the rest of putting the bag together. Took a few notes. Hopefully, I've been able to commit enough to memory and don't have to send her an email and say, Shannon, please, I'm an idiot. Can you help me? But I think with the instructions, and I was reading the instructions as I was following her, I think I got it. It's my, like I said, it's my first, real pattern of a bag. I know I did that canvas bag a couple months ago on my live, but that came from a panel, and it was just a very simple, you sew around, and it's easy. Like that was super easy. This has pockets, this has mesh, this has a lining, so things that I've never worked with. Like I said, watching her do it, I think I have a committed memory. The new strapping should arrive tomorrow at some point. So maybe if I get out of work on time tomorrow, I will be able to get the bag, at least the shoulder strappings on, and uh, work on the rest of it a little bit slowly throughout the week. So, all in all, I had a wonderful and productive weekend. We are being forced to work from home all week this week. I know it's horrible. It's something about a debate happening, and only essential people are allowed on campus. I'm not going to come out comment on how that makes me feel like they're calling me unessential, but I digress. Hopefully that means I will be able to get a little bit more time in here because I don't have commute times to worry about. I don't have to fight with traffic, and hopefully I have a little bit of energy throughout the evening. The first thing I'm going to do is get the bag done. Like I said, I've got stuff in my head on how it's going on. I have the replacement strapping arriving tomorrow. So hopefully I will be able to get the bag done before all of this starts to fade away out of my head. I also want to get Stephanie's pinwheel quilt done. I have all the pieces together, all the subunits. So it just means lining everything up, making sure I have the appropriate coordinating fabrics that I want together, and just sew them quickly. It shouldn't take too much time because Stephanie's patterns go together very quickly. And once everything is pressed out and everything, it's just putting them together, put a little bit of stashing, and it'll be done. And also, if the backing comes for my Jelly Roll Race quilt, I want to get that quilted. That way it will be able to be out to the charity soon. Of course, it really can't be sent out until after I show and tell it at my local shop during Saturday Sampler, but that always seems to be sooner than I think. Anywho, I think that's going to be about it for today. It has been a long day with the retreat, and Riley is ready to go back outside again. You guys are rock stars for listening to me ramble about my weekly shenanigans. If you wouldn't mind doing the things that the YouTube algorithm likes, that would be awesome. If you ring the bell next to the subscribe button, you will get notified when I go live on Saturday mornings and when I upload other videos. I hope you have a wonderful day and an awesome rest of your week. Until next time, stay happy and keep stitching.